It kills me to never stay. Always going away. And I feel you coming closer. At the same time you're drifting away. Feel you slipping away. But while I have you here with me, there's something I have to say. Really need to say how I feel for you. Really feel for you. How I feel for you. How I feel for you. 'Cause I want you to know. I really need you to know. That I wanna be with you. Don't you feel for me too? I've loved you in suffering silence, but I can no longer stand by. I just have to try. And I find it hard to believe this hasn't crossed your mind. I know it's been crossing mine. And I know you see what this could be. I know you feel for me.
All right.
See it in your eyes.
Levels.
And I may not change anything, but I still have to try.
Levels for the headphones.
I just can't say goodbye, 'cause I feel for you.
Anyway, let's pull that back. I'm still trying to figure out the monitoring on this, because everybody I talk to that does live streaming with OBS and stuff, it's just confusing. Even Rick Beato, I see him every week, and he's got an engineer in the back. He's trying to live stream, and he's like, I got an echo, and he's like trying to fiddle with the settings, and he's got like 2 million subscribers, so I don't feel so bad, because I'm turning down sometimes I hear it and you don't hear it, or sometimes you hear it and I don't hear it, and it's always fun. So you got to watch the meters and stuff to see if there's actual sound, because and it's something. Oh man, it's just all fun, fun. Gear, equipment, especially digital stuff. It's glitchy because at least with amps, you hear it before it starts cutting out. You hear it starting to go weird, squealy, and then you're like, oh, we need new tubes, But digital stuff, I don't know. Love-hate relationship with digital stuff. I mean, there's so much cool stuff what we could do with the phones. We could record a performance live right on the fly of anything. We could pull up a YouTube video of any song and learn it on, I mean, it's pretty amazing. We can do, but sometimes the shit just don't work. Usually a user error, but we don't want to admit that. Most of the stuff I figured out, I just Googled. It broke. Google it. Somebody else had that problem. Fix it. Usually. Anyway, what was I going to talk about? So that song I started out with, which I think you didn't even hear the beginning of, because I was in the wrong thing in OBS. I didn't set up the right thing for loopback. I was in this scene, but this scene doesn't pull in. Oh yeah, it does have. Oh, the loopback, the audio was turned off because that user error again. But yeah, because on Saturday, I turned it off because we didn't need it. Because when we do live stream, there's no other audio source except for what we're doing live right off the mixer. So if you missed it, check out on YouTube. It has an archive of all of them. You can find the stuff on Facebook, but you got to look through the stream and stuff. But you could also go on YouTube. If you go to DaveValeraMusic.com, oh look, it's right here. It's always backwards. It's right here. Go there, and people are always like, well, how do I get to YouTube? How do I get to your Twitter? How do I get to this? Blah, blah, blah. Just go to DaveValeraMusic.com, and it has links to all that stuff. Because I don't even know what my YouTube, Twitter, all that. I haven't. So a few people subscribed to my Twitter the other day, and I'm like, I don't remember the last time I posted something on Twitter. I never got Twitter. It's like, I'm going to post a little line of something that's like a half a sentence. Why? I mean, at least Facebook, you could do videos. You could post, all sorts of other stuff. Instagram, you could do, like, I don't know, pictures and videos. Twitter, it's just like 5 words. I don't know. I don't get that. But, that's me. But what was my point? Yeah, Saturday we had fun on the live stream. We could do every Saturday pretty much until we start doing live Saturdays in the real world. We'll do a virtual one from the studio here. We call it the basement. We should call it the cellar. That would be kind of cool, right? With some gravitas. But basically the studio, we call it the basement. But it's a studio. It's a studio in the basement. It's actually pretty nice. Actually, it's nicer than some professional studios I've been in. Some of them are notorious for being not clean. Musicians in general aren't, known for being fastidious. It's just stacks of amps and dusty gear and electronics in most studios. That's kind of the case here. If you look behind me, it's getting pretty bad. You should see upstairs. I got stacks of amps and stuff. Actually, I've been selling a lot of stuff. So, at one point it was like an old music store with stacks of amps, stacks of guitars, stacks of pedals, shelves of stuff, lighting, mixing boards, and I sold like 80% of it because it's just, not that I need money, it's just stuff wasn't being used and it's taking up space. So I'm not one of those people like Joe Bastamano that collects hundreds of amps, and I have basically 3 amps and maybe 10, 12 guitars, a couple of which are on sale because I don't play them, although they're pretty cool. Like the Les Paul, it's like, I hardly ever use it. It's too heavy. But it's so cool. It's like Les Paul Gold Top. But it doesn't get the clean sound. The Telly is so much more flexible. I have like 5 other guitars that I use more than that one. So it's like, I should sell. I keep putting it up for sale, then I take it down. But, if somebody gives me an offer, great. But I have 3 amps. I got a Blues Junior. Which is a cool little practice. You'd be surprised how good a sound you can get out of the little thing. It's got a nice clean sound. You put a cool pedal for it. It's got tubes in it. So not that everything tube is good. That's a fallacy. But tubes in general in a well-designed amp. Let me put my level up just a little bit because it looks like it's a little low. In a well-designed amp, and for some reason I can't hear myself, but I think you could hear me because I see people on the stream. So why even have these on, right? It's too hot for headphones, even though I look like a cool engineer. But Blues Junior, people tell me like, oh, what's a cool little practice amp? Not just a practice amp. A Blues Junior, you could use it for recording. It's got a killer clean sound. You got to match it with a good guitar. Blues Junior works really good. Actually, you know what? I should pull up. What am I doing? I want to pull up what they call consolidated chat or unified chat or whatever the name of it is. The reason for that is because I'm what they call simulcasting, like they do with the baseball game. We're simulcasting today on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Yep, we're on Twitch. And interesting enough, a good thing I was checking out the modified, unified chat, whatever they call it, because someone randomly was on Twitch on Saturday. Which somebody was chiming in that I'd never met, which is cool when people that you've, names you don't recognize, like new people following you or whatever, start coming on the live streams and you start, seeing them more and more. And here was someone that was, chatting up a storm saying, oh, I love this song. I like, would you do this? And, I never heard you guys before. And then a check later, they were coming in from Twitch. Which is a new platform. Twitch is really cool. The audio and video quality is good. It's long form. All the people are on there for like 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. Some people are on there streaming for hours or days at a time. Long form. So it's not like, a lot of these other ones where you do a 5-minute little thing, which is kind of cool. It's kind of fun. But with the way it's designed right now, Twitch, just for you people new to Twitch, and I was new to Twitch, it's like I kept seeing it. This little purple logo, Twitch. What is that? Basically, it's like long form. It's just like long form videos. You go from all these different people have their little channel, and they're live streaming like this. But it's usually what they call long form. A lot of it's people playing video games. That's how it started. So for me, I don't get it. Why I want to watch somebody else playing a video game? Why don't I just get the game and play it? But one person explained to me, well, if you're a fan of the game, you want to watch other people, and watch their technique. And I guess it's like somebody watching football versus playing football, I guess. Even with sports, though, I always like playing sports. I never like watching sports because it's like, once you played it, why would I want, just like, I guess playing guitar versus going to a concert, I guess I get it because I still might want to go see someone that's really good. But usually if I go to a club and there's a band on stage, I'm like, I just feel like I want to be up there playing, you know. It's like, put me in, coach, you know, just to watch. But sometimes I'll go to somebody that's just better than me that I want to check out, Steve Vai or Eric Gales or, you know, Stevie Wonder, and be like, just to learn, you know, as much as to have fun. You know, I mean, as a musician, when you go into a concert, it's rarely just because I just want to have fun and party. It's because you're listening and you're like, oh, I like how we use that major seventh chord there. I'm gonna, you know, you're taking notes mentally of, oh, you know, you're trying to steal and copy and figure out what they're doing that was really cool and be inspired. You know, and sometimes you're almost, depending, there's a thin line between being inspired by seeing somebody and then being depressed, being like, oh shit, I got to practice for another 10,000 hours to be half as good as this guy. But it's not, I don't know if you guys know Frank Gambale. Frank Gambale is a world-renowned guitar player from Australia. He played with Chicoria Electric Band, which is one of the most highly respected fusion bands in the world. I mean, Chicoria is just a musical genius. He's up there with Herbie Hancock as a piano player. And you got John Patitucci on bass, Dave Weckl on drums, and Frank Gambale on guitar. These are some of the world's best players, not like good rock players. I mean, these guys are jazz, fusion, they can play rock, just musicians up there. You know, you got those guys. So I like to go see like shows like that. You know, they're just on another level where like I don't even understand what they're doing. But anyway, Frank Gambale I've met a few times. He's what you would expect from an Australian guy. He's got that Australian accent. He's kind of upbeat. I don't know. The Australians that I've met are usually just, you know, kind of like almost what you see in the media. You know, put shrimp on the barbie. That's not even a good Australian accent I know. But they have usually like this upbeat kind of positive attitude, but in your face, but not obnoxious. Anyway, he's a really friendly guy. No presumption whatsoever for the amount of ability that he has on the instrument. So I went to give him, or I said, oh, I'm working on a CD. It's like, next time I come to see your show, I'll give you, you know, a copy. And I was like, listen, I'm not like as good as you or anything. And he was like, oh, he goes right to me. He's like, it's not a competition, my friend. That's the worst Australian accent ever. But I haven't worked on that yet. You know, I have to work on my Australian accent. No, that's like English. That's like Cockney. I don't know what that is. But anyway, he said that in kind of a real friendly way, like you're trying to, you know, motivate me. And it's true, though, because it's art, man. There's guys, yeah, Neil Young is not the greatest singer or the greatest guitar player, but millions of people love to listen to his music. Why? Because he has something to say. It really is about that. They have something to say. I mean, technical proficiency is great. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to convey a feeling, an emotion, a vibe, whether the feeling is let's party and dance, or the feeling is I'm having a loss and I'm trying to deal with it. You know, you have songs that are like, you know, one of the biggest albums of all time is Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and it's kind of a dark album. It's kind of depressing, but you know what? That's an album that I've listened to when I was in a breakup or whatever, and it helps you feel good about feeling bad. You know, in a sense, that's what the blues is. You know, it's what's that in the movie Crossroads with Ralph Macchio and then Steve Vai at the end. There's you know, the blues player, blind boy, whatever his name was. He's like the blues ain't nothing but a good man feeling bad about a woman he once was with. And it's kind of like a little melodramatic, but yeah, it basically it's about conveying a feeling. So don't get frustrated or depressed like, oh, I can't play like Steve Vai, so why should I even play at all? All right, why? That's stupid, you know, because, you know, I mean, you can pick any player and some other player, and this guy can do what this guy can. You know, Steve Vai can't play stuff that Danny Gatton could do. And Danny Gatton can do stuff that Steve Vai could do. There's none of us, you know, nobody does it all. But can you deliver some kind of emotion or feeling? You know, some kind of vibe that's unique that makes it's just interesting to listen to, right? That conveys some kind of human thing. You know, that's maybe one of the reasons I'm not crazy about some of the newer music. And I try to appreciate new stuff. But a lot of it's just, I know kids, I keep saying kids, people in their teens and 20s that are starting in this industry, and they're always talking about a producer. I need a producer. I need a producer to make me a track so I could write to the track. I'm like, dude, write a freaking song. You don't need and then what happens is these producers, they want all they did was take some beats and a loop of the same 3 chords that every other one. They didn't write anything. They just kind of looped some stuff, did some production to make it sound, the kick drum sound fatter or whatever. And then they give it to the girl singer or whatever, and they write a song to it. They write all the melodies, they write all the words. But then the producer wants to get co-writing credit. They want 50% of the publishing. And sometimes they even want to also get paid for the production. I'm like, what are you, crazy? What, either I'm going to pay you for the production. Here, I'll pay you whatever per hour or for the track or whatever. Or you were going to co-write and you'll get half the publishing, and we're a team and we're like going to, it's a different way, and it's, I think sometimes it's borderline scammy is what I'm thinking. They're just trying to figure out they're being opportunistic, and I just don't get the whole world. I'm like, I tell people that I know that are, very talented. I know some very talented songwriters, singers. They're trying to make it, and they're as an artist. And I'm from a different world. I'm from the band world. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna write. I'm gonna write the lyrics. I'm gonna record. I'm doing everything, and then I'll bring some other musicians in to play the parts. But it's us. I don't need a producer. I have people that like Ronan Chris Murphy mixes the stuff when I'm done. So but and when I think of producer, I might like you have your Bob Rocks, or these guys who come in and help coordinate the whole record. Like who's the guy who did back all the a lot of big records. Not is it Mutt Lange? Maybe it's Mutt Lange. Who did Back in Black and a million hit records, but he would come in and take the band to another level. He really produced the band. He made the guitar player come up with better, cooler parts. He, arranged the songs and, helped them rewrite the song. And even, I don't think Mutt Lange got like writing credit or anything. He was considered a producer. He would just take what they already had and serve it up in the best way possible by changing the song arrangements, recording it as best as possible, making sure the singer was giving their best performance. Okay, that's what I consider a producer. Now it's a guy who does a track on her laptop. That's what they call a producer. I'm like, I don't know. That's what he's basically a glorified drummer that doesn't play drums. I don't know. Maybe that's some old school like that. But again, I understand. I've heard some people do some really cool stuff, all in the box, all computer, no real instruments. But even then, hear the bigger records there. It's based around a track, but there's still real guitar players, still real instruments in there. A lot of times. And then when you hear, the bands play live, they still have Rihanna has a live band. Actually, I don't know if people know this, but Nuno Betancourt was in Rihanna's band. Nuno Betancourt was the guitar player from extremely, no pun intended, extremely talented guy on guitar. I've mixed feelings about Extreme as a band, and then you have, of course, Gary Sharon, who was the singer who wound up singing on one of the Van Halen albums, and I have mixed feelings on that as well. We could talk about that. But anyway, so you have people in pop, and then you have someone like Nuno Betancourt playing with Rihanna, good gig, very, super talented guitar player. So a lot of these, when these people are going out, there's nothing like live band. What a lot of them are doing is they're mixing the tracks. Some of these shows are big, lasers and big screens, and it's a whole. Forget the performer can get off the stage. It's the show is all the screens and the lights and the track and all that stuff, which But at the end of the day, I'd rather when I saw, like, again, I keep mentioning the David Byrne's American Utopia. He did the opposite direction, and it's been selling out, and everybody that sees it is raving about it. He said, what's it about? It's not about lights. It's not about special effects. It's not about variety. It's about people and music. So he's like, he was thinking, how can I just make it about the people and the music? So the stage is just like a gray box. There's not even an amp on the stage, not a drum kit. It's just people the guy has a wireless bass and he's walking around the stage, with Dave Byrne and whatever, bopping around. The singers are just, have the wireless headsets and they're walking around. And even the keyboard player is just strapped on him and there's this little keyboard. There's no drummer with a big drum kit or, it's percussion, like, let's see, like 8 or so, one's playing the different, couple of percussionists, one guy doing the kick drum, another person doing snare and toms, all together to put this killer sounding drum kit, ish type thing. But it's just about people, and all in a room. So basically, those guys could get off the stage, go out in the street, and perform it, and it would sound, amazing. But I don't think any of these other big acts could do that. I mean, some of these people are very talented. Beyonce is very talented. I think that's great, and I know people that do that, and it's a thing in and of itself, great. And so is hip hop. Nothing wrong with it, but I think just like in every genre, there's things in rock that you don't get from country. There's things in country that you don't get from rock. There's things in pop, if you want to have fun and drinking and dancing, you're not gonna want to listen to Pink Floyd. You want to listen to Rihanna or Beyonce or whatever. I guess everybody's got their own taste, but they do different genres serve different tastes. Just like sometimes you're in the mood for pizza, sometimes you're in the mood for tacos, sometimes you're in the mood for hot dog, sometimes you're in food for ice cream. So there's different genres of music. Sometimes I'm in the mood for blues. Sometimes I'm in the mood for, So I think when one or two styles of music dominate, I think it's like eating pizza every day. Well, that actually doesn't sound too bad because I like pizza. But after a while, you'd be like, dude, I want a taco. I want something else, or something that's really tasty. It's actually more like candy. Like pop music is like candy. Like, it's all the stuff that the brain reacts to, pretty sounds and lights and blah blah blah. It's like very easily liked, catchy, repetitive. The brain grabs onto it. It's not an acquired taste. But and so if someone had a choice to have, here's a piece of candy or here's a sandwich, most people would be like, I'm gonna have the candy or the cake. But could you imagine eating candy, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? After about 2 days, you'd be sick of it. You want some real food. So that's what I'm thinking. Then you want to listen to, like, that's like music. Then you want to listen to, like, you're not going to get sick of Miles Davis Kind of Blue. And that just has so much depth. You could be listening to it for 20 years and hear something new. Or Tool, there's just so much more depth there than a catchy pop tune that, it's going to get you happy and going and stuff. But you can't, you don't listen to it so much before it's like, okay. It's like listening to, One Step Away from the Barney song. Okay, you hear it. You're going to be singing it even if you don't want to. You're going to be hearing it in your head. Da 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 da. But is that really satisfying? Musically or artistically? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm whatever elitist. I appreciate that the pop stuff. And there's room for everything, but I just see in industry there's so much focus now on like a producer that does a track, and then a singer that kind of writes over the track, and the producer acts like he's the one that makes the hits. And I don't know, I'm like, and I know songwriters that have written songs. I'm listening to the song, I'm like, wow, it's a great melody, it's a great vocal, it's a great arrangement, it's great lyrics. This is a hit, and like, yeah, but I can't use it because I had a producer and they took half. What did the producer do? He made the track. What? You wrote the lyrics, you wrote the melody, you sang it. You could switch out that track with another track in 2 seconds, and it's just the same freaking song. To me, the song has nothing to do with the track. It's the melody, the lyrics, pretty much. Because if you have that, everything else is, you could switch. You could take a reggae song and make it into a heavy metal song. You could take a country song. I mean, how many times have we heard that? You have Johnny Cash doing a 9 Inch Nail song, and both are great, but it's a great song. The reason Johnny Cash wanted to do it, I'm thinking of Hurt, Listen to the '90s version of Nine Inch Nails version of Hurt, and listen to Johnny Cash version of Hurt. What could you think of two more different genres? But the Johnny Cash version of Hurt is amazing. I mean, he heard that song. He related to the lyrics. He related to the feeling of it. It's the same, it's a great song. The lyrics and the melody are the song. So you could put, the track. I mean, track sometimes inspires you, but to me, that's just a whole different way of thinking. And I think I tell young songwriters that I try to mentor or whatever, I'm like, dude, just write the song. Don't worry about a producer, right? Go into Pro Tool, Logic, or GarageBand. Get a loop. It takes you 2 seconds. It's not going to be sonically amazing, but you could write. If you're writing a good song, forget about the production. Write a good melody. Come up with good lyrics. I think you need a drum beat first because you want to phrase it. Although some of the best songs ever were a demo with somebody with an acoustic guitar and singing. If a song is a great song, think about a song like Yesterday, Beatles. You could just plop down the chords on the piano and sing it, and it's a great song, any great song. I mean, it's about the lyrics. You could sing any great song, most of the Beatles tunes, you could sing it a cappella, and you could know right away if it's a great song or not. All that other stuff is, of course, production is important to serve it up. But if it's got to be a great song. If it's a great song, production is secondary, and people don't want to hear that. If it's a great song, it doesn't even matter what genre it is. If it's a great, if it's a great song, and then the performance of it. Usually the vocal performance is the most important thing, because you're delivering the emotion of the lyrics and the melody. And of course, if it's a certain genre, if it's rock, you want a good rock and bad beat. But really, it's about the band, because some of the early AC/DC records, the production wasn't nearly as good as what's on Back in Black, but they're still kick-ass records because the band kicked ass. I'm gonna tell you, as a producer, and I've also had conversations with famous producers that have worked with Christina Aguilera, and I mean big people, No Doubt, and King Crimson, and but the thing, and the little secret is, it's really about the song and the performance is 99% of it, and people get lost. They're like, I need a good producer to be. No, you write great songs. One, if you don't have great songs, no producer in the world is gonna help you. Granted, there's some mediocre songs that were produced, but then the half of that is marketing. You got $1 million marketing budget. Even a mediocre song might catch, but usually those don't last. They kind of have a little bit of blip and they come down. Whereas something is a great song, or if someone's like, let's say semi-famous already, they've had hits, they put a new record out, it's almost inevitable that they're going to get some hit songs because their fans are going to, like anything they do, or at least give everything they do a shot. So they have a little advantage on the second, third, fourth album, potentially. But if it sucks, then it's not going to. But if on the other hand, if the first album is really good or whatever, but then they just don't have the talent to sustain it, or they had a one hit, sometimes bands, their whole claim to fame is one or two good songs that they wrote, and the rest of the stuff isn't that good, and they wonder, and then there's a one hit wonder, Other bands have one hit in the U.S., but then have top 10 albums in the U.K. because they just never, blew up for whatever reason. So there's all sorts of scenarios. I don't know what I'm even talking about, but everybody wants to chat. I don't see anybody chat, although sometimes the chat gets frozen out. If you get frozen out of chat on Facebook, try YouTube, and if just go right here. Oh, found it on the screen. DaveBlairMusic.com, and you could click. If you want to find anything of mine, you start there, and it has links to Twitch and Twitter. Like, I never go on Twitter anyway, so don't bother. But Facebook, I'm always posting on Facebook. Sometimes Instagram. I don't know if my TikTok's on there. I have a TikTok. I started doing stuff on there because everybody's talking about TikTok is this great thing, but I've heard that something's going on with TikTok that it might go away. I don't know, but most of my stuff is on Facebook and YouTube. Pretty much everything is on Facebook because I'm like old school like that. The old fashioned Facebook. People talk about Facebook like, if you use Facebook, you should be, using a walker. But you know what? By far, Facebook is still the biggest platform in the world. And Facebook also does own Instagram. So who knows? At some point, that stuff might merge or something. It's already kind of merged on the back end. In the advertising platform, you could post to do campaigns that combine Facebook and Instagram already. I don't know if people realize that Instagram owns Facebook. But there's, I forget what the number is, but like 3 billion people on Facebook. That's a lot of people. So it's not by no stretch of the imagination. People like to say, that's platform is going away and the hit is TikTok or whatever, or it is whatever. They said that about Snapchat, and those things come up, but I don't know. Eventually, at some of your point in a year or 5 years, maybe Facebook will be gone the way of MySpace. But I think it's a little bit different because MySpace was big but never had billions like like Facebook does, and people are invested in Facebook. Whole families are on there, different things, bands, everything. And then you have all these up and coming platforms that maybe just a blip and come back down. Snapchat was the big thing for a while. Now it's TikTok. Then it's going to be, whoever. It's going to be interesting to see where all that stuff goes. Just like the dot-coms. There was all these big dot-com companies, and then when all the dust settles, 95% of them went out of business, and then you had Amazon, Google, Facebook, So it's going to be interesting. But I think Facebook is here for for at least the foreseeable future. It's not going away. 3 billion people don't just drop off. Even with the things that we've had and the little scandals about, and there's people complaining about the algorithm blocking their stuff. And it's not going away. Too many people on it. And from what I've seen, it's still growing. I mean, I get more stuff on my feed. Sometimes I'll see something on my Facebook feed, and then somehow, it'll refresh the screen, and it'll be like, I wanted to comment on that. It takes me 5 minutes of scrolling to find it because they get so much new stuff. So people are posting stuff, literally millions, billions of stuff. So it's got activity, and it's a great platform. It works. It's getting in front of eyeballs. I have plenty of people that are quote unquote fans of me that watch my streams and whatever because of Facebook. Because they saw a video of mine on Facebook. I have a video, the Red Flags video is still going up on Facebook. Hey, Darren, what's up? I have that Red Flags video. It's got like 720,000 views. 620,000 views last I checked. Now some of those views might be 5 seconds. I think to get it considered a view, they have to click on it, watch it for at least 3 or 5 seconds or something like that. So a subset of that views is people who watch it for a few seconds is again not interested. But it's still tens of thousands. And you could see these statistics if you go into the on the back end if you put something out there. If you go on to Facebook, you could see that for me, almost 20,000 people have watched more than half of it, which is a 4-minute video. So if someone's sitting there for 2 minutes, they dig your stuff. I mean, even something I really dig, I'm like, this is really cool. I really watch the whole thing because it's Facebook, and it's almost like you need to scroll. You're scrolling. Oh, cool, funny meme. Scroll. It's almost like a little addiction, like cigarettes or something. You want that. So it's like, so it's to stick on a video for more than a minute is pretty impressive. So what's there? Darren is saying, yes, the melody and lyrics. As musicians, how much time and importance do we place on getting the guitar and bass tones to our liking? Compressor, EQ, mic position, blah blah blah. 10 times more technology on the average pedal board than the Beatles had in Abbey Road. True. Yeah, Abbey Road is good. Well, true. Most of the Beatles stuff. Sgt. Pepper, I think it was 4 tracks, and then they would have like 2 4-track machines, and they'd bounce it. That was how we did. I did when I did our first demos in a band called Halfway In back in the 80s. We had a 4-track, and at that time, that was, it was a big deal. I was like, Dave, you got a 4-track? We could record an album. It was like a big deal because nobody had access to studios unless you're a signed act. Nobody, unless the band saved up thousands of dollars to go to record. If you recorded 2 songs in the studio, it was like the band had to save up for a year to do that. So at that time, the technology, there was no garage band. There was none of that stuff. So, if you could get a half decent sounding demo, and it's out there somewhere, and I was on Facebook talking to Brian, the drummer, at one point. I think the old manager of the band still has. I don't have it. I maybe it's around somewhere. I'm curious to hear that, because we spent literally a full summer and with a 4-track doing our first demo, just tweaking. The songs were written. The good thing is the band was already playing on a regular basis these songs, so the band was pretty tight. The songs were already written, arranged, so we just had to record them. But we didn't know what we were doing. This is my first learning. I mean, I had taken some recording classes and stuff, but it was a great experience because we had this is how old school this was. We would record 3 tracks, maybe 3 tracks of drums, and then we'd bounce that down to 1 track, just like the Beatles did. And then you'd have each band member taking a track, because maybe maybe you'd have vocals on the track, and then there might be guitar solo, and then it goes back to the vocals. So you're maximizing these to the track. So then each person would have a fader and the EQ. And it's like, wait, when the guitar comes in, you got to change the EQ to this really quick, and we'd have it written down. And then we'd mix all that down live, and we'd see it when they play it back and see if we got it, and you have to make sure you got it, because then after that we had that all down. Maybe the drums and the bass are on now track 1 together mixed, and now we'd have to work all this out. Okay, now we have 2 tracks, and then that would mix down to another single channel, and then you'd have maybe the guitar, and then you'd put the backup vocals on, and try to do it without, and I remember we tried to get the best quality. This was a cassette tape, like the old, I don't know if I have any here, those old school cassette tapes. So high bias metal tapes. It was a big deal. They were like $4 or $5 each. We got the best one that you could get. And we spent an entire summer just, we would spend a couple of weeks just trying to move the mics around and try to get a drum sound. We didn't have fancy mics. We had basically SM57s. So like an SM57 in the kick drum, maybe one hanging from the ceiling, and then we try and what if we move it over here? And just a good learning experience. And the punch-ins. So if you nailed something, but then there was a part, there was no automated. If there was a vocal and you missed one word, that would be another person. The person, one person would have to be on the mixer and be like, okay, after you sing this word, we're going to punch in, and you sing it, and then we're going to stop it right after, right on the, to fix that chorus or whatever. But if you click record too soon or click too late, you just ruin the last take. Done. You got to redo it all again. So punch-ins, we had to be really careful, and sometimes you do punch in a little too early or a little too late, and then you ruin what was good about the previous take. So it's like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to just sing that whole thing again, or not just vocals or guitar or whatever. So that was, compare that today, where it just, these kids today, it's like they sing it wrong one time, and then they spend 8 hours pitch correcting it and tuning it and cutting and pasting and looping and sampling, and it's like, look what I did. I'm like, what, I don't know. But here's the thing: as someone has recorded a lot of people, and I tell people, I have some videos on YouTube that I actually, because I got sick of repeating myself, I'm like, before you come into the studio, watch these 2 videos, And I have one about if you're going, check that out if you want to think about recording or in the studio. I have a couple of videos about that, about what you should think about before you go into the studio, either as a band or just as a performer. I've done a lot of singers because, since I sing and I have singing training, I'm kind of known as the guy that singers like to go to record their tracks, because I'm not just a guy clicking record with a good mic. I actually know singing, so I could give them real-time feedback and tips that will help them sing better. and usually on the fly. I'm not going to give you I'm telling you, like, I'm not going to be able to give you a singing lesson here on the fly, and so I'm not going to talk too much about anything too advanced technically, because it would be 3 months of lessons to get to you to work this new technique into your system. I'm not going to just tell you a new breathing technique and you're going to learn it on the mic and record it. But I will be like, hey, you missed that one note because your consonant was heavy, or there's lots of little things that I hear that another person might not hear. Vocally, but more times than not, the way it goes for most performers, especially singers, but also instrumentalists, bass players, touring people that I know, it's just getting them comfortable, because these people have this amount of talent. But if you're tight or nervous or trying to get the perfect take, that you're not in your mode. It's there's books written on this. Like, there's a book called. Actually, I did some posts on Facebook. And I did some blogs on this too. If you go to my page, about flow and how singing or any performance, whether it's ice skating or karate, martial arts, or basketball, there's a skill. And skill, at first when you're learning it, you have to be an intellectual, this front part of your brain that has to break it down and say, wait, I'm gonna angle my elbow this way, and then I have to do this and shift my weight and do this, and you have to break everything down, and it's like like when you learn how to drive. First, to learn how to drive, it's like I gotta put the hand in here and here and here, and I gotta do the clutch, and I go but now when you do it, you could just singing along with the rate. You don't think it's automatic, right? Like, it's like breathing. Sometimes ever you're on your phone and talking to a person, having a conversation for 20 minutes, and you realize that you're home already. So it becomes automatic because the muscle memory, and you've just done it a million times. The same thing with performing. At first, you got to work to have all the breathing right, and then eventually the stuff is automatic, where it's just like you just got to kind of get in the mode of it. But if you start thinking about it too much, then you're not even in the right part of your brain. You're in the part of your brain that when we first learned it, and it's got to try to do it just right, and that will never work. There is actually a psychological study saying this: when people who are good at something or trying to do something well, and it's under a pressure situation, they do it bad. There's two extremes that you think are similar or different, but there's choke and there's panic. This is very interesting from an intellectual and a performance standpoint. I forget, I don't know if it was Malcolm Gladwell or one of those sociologists who talked about this. And there's a difference. So panic is like when someone's drowning and they're not even thinking. They're just, and even if someone tries to save them, they're so panicked. They're in that primal part of their brain where they'll drown that other guy with them, just trying to claw at, survive or whatever. And, or there was an example of this is kind of crazy, but people who died, there's a certain amount of people who have died skydiving. So when you're skydiving, there's a, the thing to pull your what do you call the parachute? It could be on this side or it could be on this side. And there's a certain segment of people that have died because they went to pull it. It wasn't there. And when they examine the body, there's scrapes and claws and ripped fabric because they panicked. It didn't go off. They freaked out, panicked, didn't even have the intellectual cognizance to say, wait a minute, maybe it's on this side. And they just, for the whole fall, were freaking out, panicking in that mode. And we've all panicked before, in some kind of, whether it's you almost get into a car accident, that adrenaline rush where it's like everything is slow motion and you're just in a whole different part of your brain. But basically they would claw and claw and claw, and they could only think of one thing and doing that more and more, like a panicked rat or something trying to get out of a cage. That's panic. You go into that primal thing where you're not even thinking, okay, and you can't, so that's one way of whatever, I forget what these we both under. So if you panic, and then choke is almost the opposite. Choke is when you're thinking too much. Like, if you're a pool player if you watch The Color of Money or something, and and the guy's shooting pool and he's getting all the shots and all right, and then the guy's like, I bet you $1,000 he misses the next shot, easy shot, but now he's thinking $1,000, oh I can't miss this shot, and they choke because instead of feeling pool, they've been playing pool for 30 years, they're just doing their thing, it's automatic, just like a professional football player or whatever, or any professional tennis player, anything. You start, you get out of that mindset. Now the part of your brain that has the muscle memory that knows how to do it, could do it in your sleep, could make that shot in your sleep. You're not even in that part of your brain anymore. You're in the part of your brain that's, oh shoot, it's $1,000, and you're thinking about intellectually how to hit the ball and is my thing in the right, and you miss it. Because you're not using the skill that you've made automatic. Once you're an expert at something or very good at something, it's automatic. You get into the zone. So if you think too much, you actually get out of that part of your brain, and that's when people choke. There's a guy who wrote a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. But I would recommend, even if you're not a tennis player, I recommend this book because it talks about these types of concepts. Applies to singing, applies to basketball, applies to everything. Any skill. Physical skill, and he said, if I'm someone is playing really good against me, beating me, whatever, really having a game of their life, the way I beat them is I say, damn, you're really playing really good today. What are you doing? Something different? What are you doing? And then all of a sudden they start thinking about it. They start thinking, what was I doing? And they start not doing it anymore because he switched them out of the brain where they were just in the zone hitting it, and that's tricky because there's a balance with singing or playing. There's that, you gotta know when to be in if you're on stage, you gotta know when to be in that, just let it happen. But at the same time, if you don't have the skill or if it's inconsistent, you could let it happen and then be a train wreck. So but at the same time, you could practice a solo and practice it, play 100 times in a row at home perfectly. You get on stage and you're like, oh, this is the first time I'm doing this new solo. And then you think about, wait, it's at the D, right? And you choke, literally, happens. I do it, there's a saying in like jazz improv is, when you're thinking, you're stinking, I mean, look, if you've been playing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you've done the work. There's nothing you're going to do on that stage that second that's going to make it better, But the thing that's going to make it worse is you thinking about it, which is not going to allow you to just do it. So, and I have to learn this too, because sometimes I'll learn a solo and it'll be note for note, and I want to play it live, note for note, just, because I worked on it and it's, I think I nailed it. I worked on it. But it's better to just let it go instead of being like, wait, here's where it goes to the G sharp, and I make sure I get the run the right way because I learned it your brain can't think that fast. So just let it go, and then even if it's not note for note, it's still going to be musically good. So, I didn't get the run. Instead of going diddle-diddle-diddle, I went diddle-diddle-diddle. So what? And then you at home you tweak the thing. So we ought to learn that. But at the same time, if you got to have a certain amount of skill, because I see people go at it, just let it rip, and then they're just sloppy and all over the place. But the thing is, you got to do the practicing beforehand, and then watch videos of your live stream, and I mean, even after the live stream, me and Karina were watching. We don't watch the whole 2-hour live stream right after we did a 2-hour live stream, but we'll as we're eating pizza, we'll listen to first few songs, and Karina will be like, hey, we need to work on that harmony. That's a little off there, or we need to work on the mix, or work on that part, whatever. And we're our own worst critic. But if you notice, usually if a song's new one week, we'll usually do it the next week, and it'll be better. May not be perfect, but it'll be better. And that's specifically for a reason, because we were talking about this on the live stream on Saturday. We were saying something like, there's nothing more motivating about practicing to see yourself on a live stream that 100 people have seen, or however many people have seen. It's out there in the world where you croaked or you didn't do something good. You can practice the crap out of that now. It's motivating. And at this point, we're not so. Some people are like really ego driven or whatever. It's like, oh, I screwed up that song. You got to take that down. I don't want people seeing. You know what? Our stuff is out there. Some stuff is perfect. Some of the stuff is imperfect. But if you see older ones and newer ones, the newer ones are better. Which is, So I'm not going to be like egocentric, like, well, I don't want people to think I'm not that good. So, I mean, maybe at some point I'll look at all of them and ones that are not that good, or maybe I'll take them down or whatever. But it's not like we're worried about it too much. It's like, we've been doing this long enough. We're doing 1 million live shows. So we think, like, we do live shows. Sometimes there's a train wreck. Sometimes it's phenomenal. Sometimes it's like, wow, people love that. And people coming up to you after and saying, that great job. I've been doing this long enough, but it really sucks. Maybe something sometimes somebody requests something that you don't really know and you try to pull it out of your ass. And then it's like, maybe we shouldn't have done that, But at the same time, sometimes you're afraid to do something because you've been working on it for a while, but it's a little trickier and you're not sure. And then finally someone requests it and you do it. I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty good, But I think one thing that I know a lot of musicians and younger ones, they're trying to build a career or whatever, and they're not they're not gigging right. Well, now with COVID, but even then, I hear a lot of stories lately. I have friends and we all talk about, dozens or hundreds of different acts. I talk to different people about what they're doing, and some people are frustrated because they're trying to mentor people, and they're coming to me that these people won't do what they should be doing. And people are like, it's there's COVID, so I can't do this or that. I'm like, there's so many things. You could be doing lighting, you could be doing recording, you could be doing live streaming. Now is a time when, since you're locked in your house, you should be doing more than ever with your stuff, whatever it is. I mean, Khaki King did a video or a new song, and did the video in her house. It was called Tweak, something like that. You just look at Khaki King, and she had a new video, but it's her, and she just locked in the house, so she had a little remote control thing with a phone on it to record, and she placed stuff around her house, and different little fun things of musical things and pictures and stuff, and that she made the video in her home, and did the song in her home, and she has a new song out because of it, but my frustration is, my voice teacher was telling me, because she's a lot of students, she's kind of renowned or whatever in the East Coast, but she's got a lot of students that are up and coming and talented and doing albums, and but she's like, these people are working with budgets and management and production deals and in the studio and sometimes big time producers, and they're not gigging. I'm like, she's like, don't you think they should be? I'm like, yeah, like, I don't get that. Like, you should be, doing a gig, gigging a lot, just gigging, because get that out, gig 5 nights a week, do a open mic, do karaoke, do audition, get out there, because then you'll stumble and fall and get up, and, because if you don't gig, you're going to be in a situation where, the monitor, when you're early on, the monitor mix, I couldn't hear myself quite right, and then that's why I screwed up, but once you've gigged a couple thousand gigs, the monitor could fuzz out, and your guitar could blow up, and somebody throws a tomato in your head, and you still kind of get through the song. You can't. It's hard to get you off track. It may not be perfect, but you become more like Jack Black in the Pick of Destiny, when I mentioned this the other week, where he's throwing cans and bottles at him, and that's part of his training to be able to get through the song. But and it just, I don't know how you go in the studio now, and I haven't done any gigs and recording a big album, and anyway, so Darren is saying I let myself get distracted by people leaving the room during the performance. It could be to get a drink or just for the restroom. Yeah, I mean, everybody, you notice that, it's weird, if it's often you play restaurants and people are eating and they're having dinner, and but sometimes there's times where the timing is kind of funny, where it's like you have a big table of people, they're there, and you start the first song, and then 20 people walk out, and it's like, man, we must suck. But it's just they just finished dinner, and they didn't plan on staying, but you notice that, but you don't notice 100 times when people were finishing dinner, they were ready to leave, but then they started listening to you, and they get up and dance and hang out all night. You know, that happens. So again, the mentality that you have to have as a performer. Of course, you always want to be the best you can be. But you're only going to be, I mean, on that night, you're only going to be as good as you're going to be that night. You've already done the practicing, hopefully, and it's going to be as good as it's going to be, and give you the best performance. I think the only thing you could do that show is just give your best performance, put your heart and soul into it, and people love it. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, some people are going to be indifferent, and that's par for the course. You know, I mean, you hear stories about people who, you know, put their whole, you know, heart and soul into something, and they're playing at a restaurant, and you have the person playing with the plate of food, like almost hitting you in the face as they're walking by, as they're singing your heart out. But everybody's gone through that. You know, like I said last week, Prince got booed off the stage. You know, if you're really concerned about what people, it's a weird business. Acting and performing and doing music, it's a weird business because, you know, if I tell some of these kids, they're like, you know, they're worried about, the person liked me, didn't like me, I got a comment on Facebook, whatever. It's like, listen, if you're really gonna be freaked out by what, you know, people making a comment or making a face or people liking you need to everybody to like you, you're in the wrong damn business. You're getting up on stage. Maybe you wrote a song about like some intimate, deep, depressing thing in your life that was, you know, about something intimate. You're up there in front of total strangers, telling them your life story emotionally and showing your skill, which they may or may, you know, appreciate or not, in, you know, a genre they may or may not like, in front of total strangers. You need to be thick-skinned, and the ironic thing is most artists, people, creative people, are incredibly sensitive. That's why they're artists. So that's why some of these people go to drugs, or they wind up cutting off the air like freaking Van Gogh. You know, there's a little craziness. You know, that's why, I mean, you know, they're different. And that's why people, you know, want to see them perform. Hopefully this is still going. Yeah. Okay, I think it's still going. Hey, Gene. Bob, what's up? It's weird. I'm on my phone. I see. Yeah, it's weird. The consolidated chat didn't show Bob or Gene's comments. But anyway, yeah, you know, we're a little crazy. I mean, as far as musicians go, I'm probably more well-adjusted than most. Yeah, so the positive outweigh the negative. So, I mean, there's the whole philosophy of, yeah, like, I used to talk, my singing teacher, we used to talk about this because, you know, she's got lots of students, hundreds over the years, and you see all the different personalities, but there's certain things, and it's like, we would get into the philosophy or just the life of it, the life of being like a diehard musician, not just somebody who does it as a hobby for fun on the side, you know. I mean, but there's a difference between someone who's a diehard thing that would be happier being homeless, singing on the street corner on the subway than being a billionaire, but not being able to do music. You know, there's people like that. I'm probably one of those, you know, where it's just, you know, but it's, you know, it's a gift and a curse, you know. It's because, you know, I don't know, compare that to some people, and most people probably, who really aren't, you know, I mean, there's certain people that have, like, they're on a mission. And it doesn't have, not just music. Maybe it's a doctor. Their mission is to save lives, or their mission is to start a business, or I don't know. But some people, most people, it's just like they go to work, they come home, they save money, they watch TV. There's no real ultimate goal except maybe they want to save up some money. And I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, you know. But musicians, they can't, or diehard musicians, or people that are on a mission. And there's a certain segment of people that just, every day it's about, am I closer to this goal or closer to doing this thing? And it gives you a fulfillment. That gives you like a purpose. That no matter what happens, you got that. You know, you lose all your money. You could your money can go away. Your cars, everything, anything can happen. Loved ones die. But if you have your creativity and, you know, and your skill or whatever that you develop, like my singing teacher's like, listen, this is something you're going to have for the rest of your life. This skill, your money will come and go. People will come and go. But if once you learn how to sing, you have that for the rest of your life. When you're 80, you're going to have that skill, which you could use to fulfill yourself, to be creative, to teach other people. So there's something to be said about that. So for me, I don't know, without music, I probably wouldn't have been one of those psychos that, whatever. I would have been a danger to myself and others because, we all have our ups and downs. Same thing with comedians, man. Comedians are, most comedians are borderline manic depressive, I mean, look at Robin Williams. Look at, I mean, I used to book comedians. And off stage and on stage, sometimes they're completely on stage. They're like, funny, and off stage, they look like they're ready to kill themselves. And and you hear that a lot because it's just like that's how they deal with, life. They're sensitive and they see, they're perceptive. They notice all these things, and they could do it, but they could do it in a depressing way. And just get or they could make jokes about it and make a career out of it, or write songs about it, or write movies about it, or write books about it. So that's it's all about dealing with life, right? So how do we process life? A country song or blues song. Why do people? I mean, you break up with somebody you're in love with or whatever, and a song comes on and it makes you relate. I remember one time I was going through a breakup, and it was like really, I guess I was treated poorly. I was kind of, I don't know, betrayed or whatever. And I'm depressed and upset and crying or whatever, But then on the radio, Everybody Plays the Fool comes on. Everybody plays the fool. And I'm like, wow. Everybody plays the fool sometimes. I guess this is and it made me feel better. I'm like, oh, this because when that's happening to you, you feel like you're the only person on earth that's ever happened to. The reality is it's happened to everybody else in different ways. Everybody's played the sucker. Everybody's played the fool. Everybody's got their heart broken. Everybody's was madly in love with someone who didn't feel the same about them. Everybody maybe had to break up with someone that they wanted to be with, but for some reason they just couldn't because whatever, there was something, that wasn't going to work. You couldn't trust them, or they had a drug problem or whatever, but like there's a saying, and it's important for songwriters is, it wasn't for songwriting when I heard this, but my way my brain works, as you could tell, is I connect all these things, and it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of connections here. So remember someone talking about relationships, and the more personal, the more universal, which seems ironic. The more personal, the more universal. And I try to remember that in songs, because certain, usually for songs, for me, at least a lot of them, they're catharsis. For me, if I'm going through some weird, crazy stuff, depressing stuff, I usually writing a song is the only thing that makes me feel better, or playing guitar or whatever. So I'm at the time, some of those are the best songs, because you're not thinking, I got to write a cool, interesting song so people like it on my next album. You're just like, and and those are the best songs because you're getting out of that part of your brain that's you're not in the choke part of your brain that's like trying to do something good. It's just coming out of you naturally, and it's honest and it's real, and, then it's, the more universal, the more personal, the more universal. So, everybody's had that feeling of, whatever, heartbreak or whatever. And there's different kinds of it, most songs are about a relationship, and usually most of them are on the negative side of a relationship. How many songs are about, I'm so happy things are so great, There are, but because that's only the first 5% of most relationships. The other 90% is the ups and downs, and and most songs are bittersweet like that. It's like, I love you, these are great things, but then I have this problem, so or sometimes it's at the end when things are really bad, but it's still bittersweet. Perfect song, and most people don't know this song, but is a song called 7 Years. Off of the Natalie, I'm just gonna say Natalie Portman. She's the actress of Star Wars. Natalie, not Natalie Wood. What the from the band, the 10,000 Maniacs. Who's the singer from 10,000 Maniacs? Why am I not thinking about it? No, now I have to. No, I might as well put it up. Natalie Merchant. Not Natalie Imbruglia. Natalie Merchant. Okay. So, lover or hater, I think I kind of am a fan of a lot of her. Not everything, but of course, Carnival and Wonder were two huge songs that she did back in the 90s. Cool songs, fun songs, good melody. The guitar playing on that is really cool by Jennifer. I forget her last name. But actually, let's play the beginning of that just for the heck of it. To do that, I have to go into browser mode. But my point was, I'm going to play it. There's a song called 7 Years. So I'm talking about most songs are bittersweet. You're going through a breakup, but you still love the person, and it's like you're ambivalent. Ambivalent. If you've seen the movie, I'm slow today. I didn't have enough caffeine. Girl Interrupted. She talks about ambivalence because her chart. She was in the psycho ward or whatever, and her chart said she was ambivalent. And the girl goes, "Well, that means I don't care." She's like, "No, actually, the opposite. Ambivalent means you care strongly but with two competing different emotions." And those are some of the greatest songs. It's like, I'm in love with you, but I hate you, or So the Natalie Portman song 7 Years is just such a beautiful song, and it really captured it. But first, because since I was talking about it, let's play I love the guitar licks done by Jennifer on Wonder and throughout this record. Let me just play the beginning of that. There's some really good, actually, the live version. I just think as a guitar player, it's some really cool, very tasty guitar playing that I don't hear people talking about enough. And actually, the girl, I can't remember her last name. It's Jennifer something. The guitar player from Natalie Merchant on this record. But it's a really good example of playing a cool, interesting part that complements the vocal, but is still kind of hooky and works with the song. And actually, the guitar player, she's actually a keyboard player. I don't know why it's let me put my headphones on. Is this right? Wrong song. Wait, why? I said Wonder. What the heck? Wonder Live. Here, this one. I've seen this one before. Wait a minute. Why isn't it coming through? Oh, here we go. Technology. No, it starts out slow, different than the record, but then watch when the guitar comes in. She got a very interesting way of singing. But when the band kicks in, really cool guitar part. She's doing this like finger picking thing. It's really tasty. It fits. It's a nice intro to the song. And then throughout the song, she's doing little tasty little licks, original sounding, finger picking. So it has a little more of a plucky, punchy sound to it. I always thought that was really cool. Good guitar player. But actually, her main instrument was keyboard. And I never remember her name, Jennifer something. But she also has, if you're interested in, Jennifer Turner. I guess this person agrees because it says, watching Jennifer Turner play is a revelation. She's unique. Jennifer Turner. Wow. It's interesting that I'm talking about Jennifer Turner, and a lot of the comments in here are about Jennifer Turner's guitar playing. A lot. Most of them. Wow. Very cool. So I guess some people agree with me on that. So that's it. I always dug her guitar playing. And she, if you dig that stuff, she does have solo albums, Jennifer Turner. She never made it huge on her own, but now to my other point. 7 Years. This song will make you weep. I don't know. Basically, the song is, I'm talking about ambivalence in songwriting. The song and I can't play too much of it, or else Facebook always dings me and says I played copyrighted material and stuff, even though it's fair use because I'm making, doing a review basically, or teaching, or whatever you want to call it. But the song is well, I'll play a little bit of it so you could hear the lyrics, and then I'll skip around so I don't get dinged. I don't know why it's playing. It's on my wrong account, because I have a paid account that should skip. Should be skipping the ads.
In this master class, I'm going to teach you how to find your rhythm.
Yes, okay. It's really well played, too.
How did I love you?
It's like,
There was no measuring. Far above their study world. Far above
see how everything is like pulled back. It's like behind the beat. The piano playing is really it's sad. So it's like, it's a really good example musically, because the music is, it's obviously sad, but she's saying, a perfect example of irony or ambivalence. She's saying how much I loved you and all this stuff. But there's obviously, it's not a happy song. So it's like the fact that she loved them so much. I'm assuming it's a guy. I don't know. It could be a girl these days. But this person she loved so much. The more you love them, the more that positive emotion you had with that person, the harder it is when it doesn't work, or
everything
with the
in your tower over it. You agree.
you say, and the lyrics are really good too. And then she talks about, I can't play the whole thing.
I was sure the rightful guardian of my
So I'm saying, all these things about,
down.
but then here, there's a part where, let's see, I'm trying to skip around.
Guardian of my life. Down, you betrayed her. How you lied.
So she's like, you betrayer, you lied. So it's like, wow, I love you so much. You were everything. You're my light. You were pure. It was wonderful. And then you betrayed me and you lied. That's some heavy shit. And then what's the chorus going to be? Because she's ambivalent. So what is this? Is the chorus going to be, I hate you, or I still love you? What? So let's check out the chorus.
But for 7 years, you were loved. I laid golden arcade crowns around your feet. And for 7 years, I bowed down to touch the ground so holy. Your devotee. You are all I could see.
It's pretty wild. So here's the story. She's like saying how she loved him. He betrayed her. But then the chorus of the song is saying, it's a little different twist on it, because she's talking about there was a time when it was special. For 7 years, it was beautiful, or whatever. In this depressing, sad song, she's still wistfully remembering the good times, even though he betrayed, in this up and down, which is, universal. We've all been through something like that. And then the cellos come in towards the end. How could you can't listen to a cello and instantly not start instantly weeping. Cello is like the saddest instrument, And Jennifer turn on the guitar. And that kind of builds up, but very slow, very subtle. Just a lot of nuance in this song. It builds up a little. The drums come in, and then This more powerful, this, you know, it's subtle, like a simmering, like it's just going through something. And then it kind of pauses, and you're like, is this the end of the song? It seems like the end of the song. Oh no. And look at that little piano part. Just that. These are the little subtle things, right? Like you think it's over, and then it comes in very soft way and just slow. I mean, it's like almost the sound of the piano is like unsure, like I want to say something, but I'm emotionally, you know, vulnerable, and that's how the piano part comes. I mean, these little subtle things, you don't hear this in tracks. Let me tell you that. There's that little pause there, even. It's like quiet, very long time. Come on. It's almost like you're sure the song's over. And then it's like, but I want to say this last little thing. And then the cellos come in. That's a cello, right? It's not a viola, right? Yeah. I don't know. I think it's cello. Maybe it's a viola is like a lower violin. The cello is more deep. There's some cellos in here, but that is a breakup song. You know. So and you know, I've done things like that in some of my songs. You know, probably what song that might be like. There's a song I did called "In Love with You," which go check it out. It's on, you know, it's on my channel. It's on it's on just buy the album. No, or it's on Spotify too if you want to check it out. But that one is a good example of those kind of lyrics, because it's like it's a little bit of a different take, but it's basically saying, I know for a fact this is never gonna happen. This isn't gonna work out. You know, you went back with your boyfriend, or what, you know, whatever the, you know, I won't get into this. You could listen to it. It's, you know, but basically, I know for a fact this isn't gonna happen. This isn't working. But, you know, I just need to tell you that I love you. I knowing that, but I just need to tell you this, looking in your face, telling you this, you know, to get it off my chest. And you could, you know, so it's like these mixed feelings of, I love you. I know it's not going to work. But this is what I wanted, but it's a lost cause song, but still saying a confession of love of a lost cause, you know, so it's an interesting twist. It's, you know, but again, that's one of the things when, you know, the more personal, the more universal. It's like a real story, you know. And I know people who kind of knew the details of stuff that I was going through when I wrote that, and they get emotional when they read it. But like, oh wow, yeah, I remember that, you know. Yeah, I know what that's about. You know, only a couple of my closest friends. You know? But you know, and I've written songs about girls or whatever, and you know, and then later on I'd be like, you know, that song's about you, and they're like, yeah, I kind of thought so, you know, but I didn't want to say anything. You know, most of the stuff is well, it's weird. Some songs are like, this is about this person when this happened, and some of those are the best songs because, like I said, it's a more real thing. And other songs are more conceptual about, you know, a bunch of different things that I've gone through, and it could be about multiple situations, but a song about how that happens in a relationship or whatever. But most of the songs, you know, are about somehow relationships, unless you're Iron Maiden, and then it's about Egyptian, you know, mythology or nuclear war. But yeah, that's the genre. You know, that's the genre. I mean, metal, it lends itself to talking about more visceral, more like angry things. You know, are there any Iron Maiden love songs? You know, you can. You know, I mean, Tool has songs that are, I don't know if you call them love songs, but about how a relationship breaks apart in a real artistic cool way, like Schism, I think is kind of about, like we've split in two and we can't sing on the same level, but the way he does the lyrics, because he's Maynard James Keenan is very interesting and quirky, but it's really artistic, and it's not a romantic song like this one, but it does talk about relationships. But I don't know what my point was on that, but again, basically it's about, we're talking all that about music. I don't understand how people are preoccupied with the track or production or whatever. The production on this was really good, but it was a great song, and what made that song was great. It was a great subject, great lyrics that were very personal, and then they were performed by the piano player, the cello player, her vocal, just delivered it in a way that was totally authentic to that song, which is the whole point. Maybe she wrote this when she was going through something, and someone who listens to the song is going to relate to what she went through or what they're going through, because when I listen to this, I'm not, just like when, if you ever see a movie, and who's ever, I've cried at movies, there's certain movies where you feel you invested in that character. And sometimes it's because you've gone through the same thing and it related to your thing, but other times you actually invested that character and you feel sad, that happened, there's certain movies like, Joy Luck Club. At the end of Joy Luck Club, if you've never seen it, well, spoiler alert, and I know it's not music, but it all ties together, man. There's an end of Joy Luck Club where basically the girl has long lost sisters that she never knew existed, and her mom, like on her deathbed, told her about these sisters or whatever, or her aunt or something, and her mom died, and she is and she goes to China to meet them, and the sisters don't know the mom had died, so she has to tell them about that, but then tells them, "Mama, your sister." It's hard to watch that and not cry, at least for an artist that like, because I'm relating to, like, when I'm watching a movie, I'm totally, if it's a good movie, I'm totally invested in. I'm like invested in that character. Like if I was reading other people, it's just like watching pictures, and for me, certain movies, I just don't, it's like, meh. Titanic, I could never get into, because even though you'd think a movie like Titanic would get you, it would be a tearjerker. But they just turned it. James Cameron, somebody was talking about this on my feed the other day. I was talking about how the band on the Titanic kept playing even when it was sinking. Because, on my music page, we were talking about that. It came out, the joke came out because someone put a meme about all this stuff is happening. COVID and politics, and the world is, all riots in the streets. And then musicians are like, check out my podcast, or and it's hilarious. But yeah, but at the same time, I say, well, listen, on the Titanic, the band kept playing, so we're doing, I think it's an important thing to have, to be like, hey, there's other things besides riots in the streets, and things are actually not as bad as you'd like to think. A lot of it's, of course, there's a lot of things going on. There also, but compared to, let's say, World War II, Poland or something. I mean, we're most of us are in this life have never been to war, have never had bombs dropped on our house, have never worried about starving. Compared to the history of the world, and I'm not going to get into politics. That's one rule that I have on this, because I could go off. I have a degree in political science, so I could go off. I could do a whole podcast, a 3-hour podcast a day on politics, because I studied this stuff for years. So we're not going to talk about politics or history, but bring it back to music. They were joking about that, and like, well, even on the Titanic, the band kept playing, and they're considered, it's considered a heroic thing that they did. There's a write-ups about the band leader and how he had a history of being a moral, upstanding person. They feel that he probably did that because, he knew what was happening, and he wanted people to, help people stay calm, people could stay grounded, not panic, not freak out. Maybe because that band kept playing, probably some lives were saved, believe it or not, because probably people a little more grounded, a little less freaking out, panicking, screaming. It's a band playing classical music, So that was the one part of the movie that was actually realistic and true, and I could relate to, because It probably did save lives because people were less likely to panic and freak out, although they still did, and they didn't even fill up the lifeboats, you know. But that's a whole nother story. But my point is, like, the movie Tectonic, it really didn't get you invested in the characters, I don't think, or not any more than it's a romantic, thing, But certain movies, they really make you like that. I don't know. Joe Luck was one that I was like, every time I see that, it's like there's a few scenes in that it's just because it gets you really invested in the character, just like a good song. You relate to that person and what they went through, and then you're invested, and then things happen in their life, and you're like, wow, because as a human, we're all connected, and that's what about music and books. It's really, at the end of the day, being able to relate, connect to the fact that we're all human. Now there was a book I started reading, which was the Solzhenitsyn book, which was the Gulag Archipelago, which is also related to that. Was it Eckhart Tolle wrote the book about the concentration camps? I read that a while ago, and that makes you really have perspective on life and connection to people. I think that's something we need more of, whether it's through music, books, or whatever, something like that. It makes you have perspective on our connection and the horrors that happen in life. At the same time, makes you inspired about the human spirit and things that you could, if he could get through that, like Eckhart, I think it was Eckhart Tolle, right? Or however you pronounce it. Let me make sure I'm accurate, because I'm pretty sure, but I could be the wrong. Speaking of, seeing the wrong person. Or maybe it's not. Wait. No, wait. What was the book? Wait, what wasn't Eckhart? No. Oh, wait. That's a different book I'm thinking of. What's the book about the guy was in a concentration camp? I have to Google this now. It's gonna bother me. Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl. Yeah, good. I'm glad I Googled it, because I would have seen it. So Viktor Frankl book, yes. It's Man's Search for Meaning. So he's talking about how he was in the concentration camp, and he still found meaning for life and everything, and in the worst of circumstances. And it has little crazy tips, like things like he made sure if he found, he would make sure he had a piece of broken glass or everything, and he would shave on a daily basis, always be clean shaven, and that helped him survive mentally, to feel like a human being, because what happened is people would just let themselves go, let their hair grow, let their beard grow, and they became like less human. They were just and that by shaving, it felt like a little bit of civilization, and made him remember that he's a civilized man in a world in just a crazy circumstance, which is sounds crazy, but at the same time it's incredibly insightful, but again, it all circles back to humans, and that's that's why maybe that's when I hear it goes all the way back to what I was talking about music, and when it's just a track, there's something less human about it. Even though it's human wrote it, it's still a loop, it's still quantized, it's digital. Somebody didn't play that, and I think there's something, not that there's anything wrong with that, there's some of that music that I think is really cool, and even rock bands have done computerized looping things that, arpeggiators that make some really cool stuff. But what I'm saying is there will always be a room for a human being playing that instrument, or, just like we heard on that song, that piano player that came in behind the beat and started cautiously, and then kind of a little more, they were trying to, you don't get that you couldn't do that. Like, you could spend all day in a MIDI and trying to say, well, I want it to feel emotionally vulnerable, so I want to lay the note a little. It doesn't work that way, man. You can't do that. Even if you copy that MIDI to get the timing just that way in the dynamic settings, it still wouldn't feel right, because there's so many millions of little subtle things, and just the way your finger felt, because you were feeling an emotion and you pressed it down just a little different, a little softer than a harder. There's something in conveying of that. It's like a singer, singing the song with, dynamics, and they're feeling the emotion of the song. You could hear it. Same thing with playing an instrument. That's why I like guitar, because your finger's on the string that's making the sound. And I like to set things up on the guitar where it's a little bit harder to play because I'm not using a ton of gain. Where if I play it in different ways, it sounds different, which makes it more vulnerable to, if I hit it wrong, it doesn't cover up the mistakes. But it's very touch sensitive. That's why I like amps like the Two Rock and the Tone King. Very touch sensitive. So if I make a mistake, you so, but at the same time, it allows you to have a voice where if I play it a little softer, I play it a little harder, you could hear that. And so I'm trying to sing through the instrument, always working on it. But to me, I think that's, again, like talking about, goes back to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm not as good as Steve Vai, or I'm not as good as Frank Gambale. So I'm trying to, but it's not about that. Again, like Frank was telling me, it's not a competition. It's like, I had a feeling, I'm a human being, I want to convey that feeling, and I want to be good at conveying that feeling to people. And I put, my record, I don't know, I have my CDs over there. And I've had people listen to the songs and message me or email me or whatever, or Skype me or whatever, saying, I'm going through something, and your album helped me get through it. I've had more than once people email me or tell me that I went through chemotherapy, or I had cancer, or whatever, or I was in a relationship, and this song, helped me deal with it. Whether it's just because they enjoyed the music and it distracted them. Music could be a distraction. I'm going through chemotherapy, but I could put my headphone on and it takes me to a different place. And I had somebody literally tell me that. They put the record on, and they could forget about the chemotherapy and feeling sick and just listen to music, and it takes them away. And, there's studies that laughter, music are in a sense, a painkiller, because it distracts your mind from focusing on pain. Literally. I mean, they could do brain scans that show this. And other people who feel that the song, they were going through a breakup and then they relate to the lyrics of the song. Everybody, I'll never forget, and this was a long time ago, Everybody Plays the Fool made me feel a little more, have more perspective on something that, being betrayed or whatever. Everybody plays the fool sometimes. Even this guy who's got a famous, song that's been, a world-renowned famous, that guy, to write that song, he played the fool. That's why, right? A friend of mine wrote a song, who was it? I think it was Dinshaw. A friend of mine, Dinshaw, he wrote a song, and his song was like, to write a good song, you need somebody to break your heart. That's not exactly what the words of it, but it got a good point. Not that I'm going out to find a relationship that's doomed so I could write good songs, although, in some ways, if at least that's another upside, because Darren was talking about is the positive side of being a sensitive musician and you're obsessed with music. The upside is, if you go through some crazy stuff, some depressing or relationships or whatever, you write some of the best songs you ever wrote because of it. You got those songs for the rest of your life, even after 10 years later you've forgotten about the pain. So in a way, it's it worked out. It's a good thing. Some of the best songs that we've ever heard that changed the world as we know it. Songs that we couldn't, Beatles song or whatever. We're inspired by someone who have gone through some stuff. So I'm glad that somebody broke Paul McCartney's heart, or else we wouldn't have, Yesterday or whatever song, So this has been a deep discussion these days, but we never know what we're going to talk about on this. I don't know. I keep calling it a podcast. Technically, it's not a podcast. Is it a blog? Is it a vlog? I don't know what that. It's me talking. I don't know what's the official term they're using these days. I guess it's a vlog, video. Like a blog but video. Is that what this is? And then if I did the audio of it and put it on iTunes, then it would be considered a podcast. Maybe at some point I'll take all of these and turn them into audio and create a podcast. Maybe I'll be the next Joe Rogan. I'll have some guests on here. I'll get David Lee Roth as a guest, and I'll get all sorts of crazy people. Ben Shapiro, talk about politics. But actually, David, if you get a chance, watch the Joe Rogan podcast with David Lee Roth as a guest. I thought that was a pretty interesting one. He talks about Van Halen, but he's a really interesting guy. I mean, he's one of those guys that is just, interesting. I mean, he's got the means to travel around the world, and he does. But he's the type of guy, he'll just go to, they were going to tour, do some shows in Japan, and he had, he booked his flight to Japan, and the tour got postponed because Eddie was sick or something. He had to get surgery or something. So he's like, you know what? They said we're going to postpone it. We'll book those shows again, like in 10 months. He's like, you know what? The heck with it. He kept his flight and he went to Japan anyway. He's like, I'll hang out in Japan for 10 months. And he went, and he's like, Joe Rogan is like, how did would you, like, how'd you learn Japanese? He's like, I went to 2-hour classes every day, a 2-hour class, and I learned Japanese. And he's like, did you know anybody? He's like, no, I didn't know anybody in Japan. I just went. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, it shows that he likes to experience life and learn, not just experience, do fun. Obviously, he had partied and did drugs and with the band, but he also wants to live life. And he's like, he's actually spent months learning calligraphy from a Japanese master. And he's like because of his position and because he's kind of famous, he's in a position where he could go to somebody who's the best wrestler in the world and say, hey, could you teach me some wrestling moves, and maybe I'll show you some cool music stuff, so it's a great, he's making the most of it. He's not just like living and spend like some people, they just spend their money and drive sports cars. I'm sure he's done that too, but he actually takes advantage of his position where he travels the world and he'll go to Japan for a year and learn to speak Japanese. He'll learn martial arts. Actually, he always studied martial arts. He studied gymnastics. I mean, you could see the flips that he does on stage. That wasn't just some rock and roll drunk dude jumping off. He practiced, from what, I forget, one of the managers wrote a book. And in the book, he says he practiced that stuff for weeks, for months to get that drum riser split jump that he has. He practiced and practiced and practiced till he nailed it. He was, the reason, he wasn't just some guy. And that's one of the reasons where they're good. His stage performance and everything, that stuff, he worked on that stuff. What he was going to say and, his emotions and everything. His vocals were a little loosey-goosey and he drank a little too much. But he did step up to the plate and he knew he had to. He said, he grew up on the podcast. He said he grew up. They came up as a band where you played to eat. They did 5 shows a week. Talking about musicians and people that I know that want to go in the studio and record a bunch of songs, and then shop it to major labels or try to become famous by doing videos and never did a freaking show. I don't get that. You're not helping yourself. Because what do you do when you step on a stage, in front of, the first time you step on a stage, it's going to be in front of 5,000, 10,000 people, opening up for Rihanna or something, You should, at that point, you should have done a couple thousand shows. So then, I know people that have done hundreds of shows and then they go tour and they're in front of 100,000 people and hey, it's cool. It's fun. They're not like, oh my God, I better perform, But anyway, he said, they did parties, they did backyard parties, they did clubs, they did whatever, and they played to eat. And then when they played a club, they had to, keep their gig. So they had to be better than the band before them. It was a very competitive, 80s, late 70s, early 80s on the Sunset Strip in California. You're very competitive. A lot of bands out, a lot of guitar players. You had Randy Rhoads was on that same circuit. You had, George Lynch was on that same circuit. A lot of guitar, very competitive. But so Eddie Van Halen and the whole band, they had to step up and they had to be, that good. They had to, great songs, great guitar playing, fun band, great fronting, great entertaining, and, it shows it's quality stuff. They had the whole package, the attitude, the songs, the musicianship, but it was a great balance of really good musicianship, obviously Eddie Van Halen, but also Michael Anthony's backup vocals and his bass playing was solid. And, Alex Van Halen, he's not Dave Weckl, he's not Neil Peart, but he was solid. He wasn't a crummy drummer, and he played really well with Eddie because they've been playing together since they were kids. So he could complement what Eddie was doing, and Eddie did a lot of weird things timing wise, and they were able to just still lock in together. And then Michael Anthony kept the fort down, because when you have those two guys kind of going off together, you really need a Michael Anthony. A Billy Sheehan or a Victor Wooten would not work in that band, because then it would just, everything's busy. You need somebody to hold down the fort, and his harmonies. So it was a full package of a really great rock band taking it to another level. Which you don't see that often. You see a lot of, if a band has great songs, but the best bands are the bands where they're greater than the sum of their parts. Van Halen, as talented as Eddie Van Halen is, that lineup really worked well. And Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page has done some solo and stuff with the Firm. Robert Plant. Some of the Robert Plant solo stuff is actually really cool, and he's been experimenting with all sorts of different genres. I think he even has something new out called Roots or something. It has a tree on the cover. I haven't heard it, but Robert Plant. Actually, the Robert Plant solo albums are really cool. Stuff like Big Log. If you Digging Deep. Or he has Robert Plant does have his own podcast, which is something I've put on my playlist, but I haven't listened to. So if you're a Zeppelin fan, check out Robert Plant's podcast, which I will, and I'm sure it'll give me stuff to talk about. But I thought he has a new album out, or new something. Let me look. Something, it'll give me something to check out. And then I think it's time for me to get an ice pop. It's like 90 degrees in here. I don't have air conditioning in the studio, by the way. Robert Plant, Digging Deep, Subterranean, is a 2 CD set. So, solo recordings. It's a journey through Robert Plant's solo recordings. Through unreleased tracks. So it doesn't look like it's a new album. It's like unreleased tracks and 2 CDs. Interesting. That's worth checking. It's a very cool looking cover too. It's a very pretty cover. It's got the roots, so it's like digging deep, saying, obviously digging deep, like whatever emotion, or I don't know if it's emotionally or if it's a metaphor that he's looking at old tracks that they never released, so it's digging deep into the vault. I don't know. Anyway, I think I'll end off on that. But again, the best bands are bands that with this, the combination of those elements were greater than the sum of its parts. And even a lot of solo acts you don't realize, like Tom Petty. But there's guys in his band that made that sound. Billy Joel, there's guys in his band that he wouldn't have been. So even those things, it's not, there's very few solo artists it's all about that solo artist. Maybe Prince, but even Michael Jackson, he had, Quincy Jones, without Quincy Jones, Thriller wouldn't have been Thriller. It's, and there's a lot of bands that, you don't realize, that there's another guy in the band who is, an important part of that combination. The Hall & Oates stuff is better than the solo Daryl Hall stuff, arguably. I think so, and it's cool stuff, and I don't know if it's because of Oates or not, but but that's just off the top of my head an example. But the Doors, Jim Morrison was great, but if Jim Morrison did a solo album, I guarantee it wouldn't have been as cool as the Doors stuff. It wouldn't have, he probably went off the deep end and did some weird poetry thing, and they did. I think he did some spoken word poetry recordings and stuff. So even though he was the star, Ray on the piano, on the organ parts. Amazing, beautiful parts that just set the mood that were perfect for Jim Morrison's voice. And then the drum parts that he put were not typical boom boom tss, boom boom tss, rock parts. He brought in jazz elements. They brought in, so the combination of those musicians did create that sound, which was unique to this day. The Doors, the Police. Sting, as talented as he is, and Sting is very talented. Singer, writer, he knows his stuff. Jazz. Rick Beato just did if you're into Sting or the Police, Rick Beato just did a couple of podcasts about Sting and his songwriting and skill, his knowledge, deep knowledge of music. He's like an advanced jazz musician. But some of the just with Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers, they just did something that was singular, As good as the Sting solo stuff is, there's something special about the Police. Andy Summers has his whole flair on the drums that is like a reggae but punk. It gives it a certain sound. And yes, on Sting's solo stuff, he would have Omar Hakim and some of these great, phenomenal world-class musicians. That's not always the main thing. Is it the right musician to complement what you're doing? And of course, if you have Omar Hakim on drums or you have some of these great players, it's going to be amazing, you know. But sometimes it's better someone who's in the band writing with you and just expressing themselves as opposed to a phenomenal musician doing a part, you know. Sometimes those musicians, I mean, and there's a gray area. I mean, look at David Bowie. He brought in Robert Fripp. He brought in Nile Rodgers. He brought in, you know, all sorts of great musicians. But I think that when he did it, the role that they played was less of a session guy just playing a part, but they were doing a creative thing. Listen to the stuff that Robert Fripp did on the David Bowie records. Weird sound effects that, you know, I mean, stuff that you would never think that would go on a hip hop record. And, you know, stuff they did, like those sound effects on their Heroes, kind of make the song. And he had different, you know, and the way it was mixed, because David Bowie had a few different guitar players being different. I think Carlos Alomar also played on that, on Heroes. But then you have the parts that Robert Fripp played, and he was trying to choose. And then at the end, he actually put them both on the record and layered them and created a whole new thing that made that song more special than it would have been. So that's a different kind of role that Fripp played. He was playing an artistic, creative role in that, you know, to make and that was one of David Bowie's genius. He brought in musicians, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Robert Fripp, John Niles, all the band members he would handpick that were unique, that would bring something to the table that would make him, you know, that made his, you know, he could have never done that stuff just solo, even though his name was on the record, you know. I mean, some of the best stuff, look at, you know, Graceland, the record by Paul Simon. I mean, that record is phenomenal because of the musicians on it, and it wasn't session musicians. He got these people from Africa playing all this native stuff, and he mixed it with his songwriting and created something. It was more like it was really like not the Paul Simon record. It was their record with him. You know, they're collaborating together, and it created something special, real music. So I think that's, you know, even when I have musicians, I bring in Donna because I play with a million bass players, drummers, you know, and I bring in, you know, Ed Klinger's playing drums on that's, you know, the second record. Gary's playing live on a lot of the new stuff. Gary's probably going to play the next record. And they have, you know, I tell people, don't try to play it like a session, you know, like you're trying to nail the part. Because a lot of these guys, like Gary plays sessions with Gloria Gaynor, and she's, you know, of course, when he plays live with her on a tour, I Will Survive, you better play what's on the record. But for me, on original stuff, I'm like, put your own flair into it. Have fun with it. Throw, you know, he's a Neil Peart fan. I'm like, throw some throw toms in there. Be creative, and if it doesn't sound right, we'll try something else. But we're trying to come up with something cool, new, and interesting. And I think on that second record, I brought different musicians in. You know, Donna's playing bass on both the records, actually. And Ed Klinger played drums on that second record, and he has his own style. He has a little bit of a funky style, but he also always has that rock, meat and potatoes, John Bonham thing going, but he still has a groove. And I let him kind of play what he wanted, and I kind of worked around it with some of the other parts. And Donna has her own sound, and, you know, I think and at the end, I'll play off of what they play, and they play off what I play, and create something new that was different than what I originally wrote. And that's, you know, David Bowie. I think, you know, I tell musicians, I'm like, you're a better bass player than me. You're a better drummer than me. So do your thing. Have fun. Be creative, you know. And, you know, it'll, you know, don't feel like you have to just get it right, you know. I don't want that. I want somebody that's going to throw some of their own personality into it. So it has some vibe, you know. And that's what people and produce, you know. When I set my first record off to be mixed, Ronan, the one thing Ronan said, and he mixes literally hundreds, maybe thousands of records, he's like, it's got a vibe. I'm like, to me, that's the best compliment. I don't want someone to say, what a great, amazing guitar lick you did. You know, oh, I like how you hit a high C. It's good singing. No, I want people, he said, it's got a vibe. Well, that's the point. That's the whole point. You know, I'd rather crack on the note and have that note have vibe than have it be perfect and be, have it sound like, clinical. Hopefully it's both. It's technically perfect. Like Donny Hathaway, his singing is technically flawless and it's got emotion. I mean, it's like, hello. That's the standard. But anyway, if no one has got nothing else to talks about, I think we got in some deep shit today. The deep philosophy of life. Why not? Who knows? Good stuff. Maybe, But anyway, 9:30 Saturday, we'll be back doing live songs, hopefully with emotion and vibe. Hopefully, depending on, it's been hot in the studio. So sometimes, a couple of songs I want to do, but if it's like 90 degrees in the studio and we're sweating, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to pull it off. I'm just, I will deplete it a little bit. So, I don't know, depending. Once it gets into like this upper 70s, I won't be so, I'll be able to sing the high D in the Foreigner tune or whatever. Although we almost finished the construction over here in the other part of the studio, and we cleaned up so there's less dusty. Because sometimes when we singing for the first few weeks of this what we did on Saturdays, both of us were getting like halfway through, and it's messing up our ability to sing some of the notes and stuff. And we still sang them, but they were a little scraggly or whatever because we were breathing in dust. Because there's not a lot of ventilation. Now we did construction in the back. We opened up some windows. We're going to open up a window over here, create some cross drafts and get some more ventilation in here. Maybe even put some air conditioning. So it might be more conducive since we're actually performing in here more. Be nice to have, a nice environment to perform more better in. Hey, Drew, what's up? She just joined. So, actually, we were just finishing up, but we did. If you're only catching the end of this, catch the whole thing because we got in some deep, heavy subjects. We were all crying and sharing today on the podcast about songwriting and deep, lyrics and personal lyrics and just song. What's like a track that a producer does on the computer versus a real musician playing from his soul and his heart. And that's why I like to do stuff. It's just real musicians. In a room. Maybe eventually I do some loops. There's some loops and stuff that I've used on recordings in the past, especially the first album, mainly because I couldn't afford, or didn't have the technology to do live parts. So I had a loop of a tambourine or something. But now it's just like the second record, I don't think there is everything is live. I don't think there's a single sample or loop on the second record, Not Afraid to Bleed. The first one, even the keyboard parts in Sun in the Rain, was like a MIDI thing. I wrote it, but I can't play it that good. So, but it's in the background. But anyway, and some of the drum were loops, but they were live performers. So it was, I hate MIDI drums and stuff. So I've never used that. But there's stuff where I've used. I think on Red Flags actually it was actually a drum loop, but it was a drum loop of a real drummer playing a part, and then I just cut it up to fit the song. That's the only thing on that record that was the drum loop. Everything else was live, and only because I recorded that before the rest of the album. It was kind of a single, and then I did the rest of the album, put them all together. But pretty much everything I do is live. Real musicians, even the percussion and stuff isn't, because in Pro Tools or Logic, you could just pull in a sample of a tambourine and drag it, and it's like, but it's just not, it's different. It's different than having Gary take the shaker or the tambourine and play it to the song, because the dynamics or the imperfections. He's got phenomenal rhythm, but maybe on the chorus he'll play it a little bit louder, and the verse will play a little softer. Accent things. He's vibing into it. Complimenting what he played on the drums or whatever. Even if it's for the whole song, it sounds different. Emo show. It's KG. That's Karina. I think she's chiming in. Karina, you're coming in at the end. We had some. Bob was on. Darren was on. We were talking about some deep, heavy subjects about. Oh, when you say emo show, it's like emotional show. Okay. I thought you meant emo, like emo, the genre. This is a genre, emo. Which I don't even know. What is emo? It's like a very electronica type of thing, right? I couldn't even tell you, and I should as a musician, but yes, we laughed, we cried on this show. Now go watch Joy Luck Club, and and tell me that you don't cry by the end of it. I do every time. That's that movie. And now, if you want just one more, I always like kind of keep ranting, but I'm gonna, because I need a nice pop. It's like 90 degrees in here. But the one movie that it's not even a tearjerker. It's like disturbing. If you see Bjork's movie, Bjork was in a movie called Dancer in the Dark. It was an indie movie. It's weird. It's quirky. If you like Bjork, you'll love the movie. There's a lot of it's the weirdest musical, because because they wrote this, originally they wrote the movie. This guy, I forget the guy's name, Lars von Trier or whatever. He's known for making weird indie artsy movies. So he wrote this movie. He wanted Bjork to do. Oh, KG's been here the whole time. She's been hiding. She's been like hiding, listening along. You gotta speak up more so we know, But anyway, but Dancer in the Dark, if you haven't seen it. So Klaus von Trier, he's very artsy. So he writes this movie, and he wants Bjork to do the soundtrack. So she does the soundtrack, and then he's like, hey, why don't you just be in the movie? Why don't you? Because they were going to have an actress play the role and then pretend to sing the songs. I'm like, wait a minute. She's never acted before. So being the artist she is, and she's a very, if you know Bjork, she's a, obviously a little weird, very emotional, quintessential artsy person. So she went into this role and went all in on this role to the point like it would mess with her head. Oh, emo is sad stuff? Oh, okay, I don't know. I have to go listen to some emo. Maybe I'll like it. But so that performance, for someone who's never an actor, never acted, it's one of the most real performances that you will ever see. And it's by the end of the movie, you'll be freaked out. It's such a it's sad, it's depressing, it's just everything bad happens to this person. This person has a good heart. She's trying to do the right thing. She sacrifices for her kid, and nothing goes right, and it just gets worse and worse. And the movie kind of starts out kind of boring, and it's a handy cam, so it's like not a big fancy production, or it's trying to look not like a fancy production, but it is, because they have these big dance routines on a moving train. So obviously there was they had the budget, but they were trying to make it not look like a typical blockbuster film, and it doesn't. So if you like, it's worth checking out. You're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. But this movie, Bjork is all in on this role. And it's a tearjerker, but it's not even a tearjerker, because I won't tell you the ending. The ending is effed up, what winds up happening. I mean, and the way they go through the scene of what she goes through, you gotta, I'm not gonna spoil it, because you gotta see this. And don't watch this and then message me on Facebook or whatever, tell me what you thought. Because I don't think you could watch this movie and not be at the end of the movie like, what did I just watch? And it's not weird. Like, it's not just like Eraserhead or some of these weird kooky movies. No, it's a real story. The music is pretty cool, but the storyline, you get invested in this character, and the way she plays the role, she's so emotionally invested. She's crying. When she's freaking out, she's freaking out. She just put, as an artist can do, actors can do, singers can do, they could put themselves in the role where they're actually in the moment, like, I guess like method acting, even though she's never acted before, she's kind of method acting. Like Daniel Day-Lewis will actually talk in the accent, of the guy from the 1800s, even when he's off set. He's in that role for the whole thing, but that's why he's freaking amazing. Or when they did what was the movie with what was the war movie that everybody talks about with the fat guy? The Godfather. Anyway, he's anyway, he was a method actor. A Streetcar Named Desire. Why can't I'm slow today. Usually I could think of things off the Marlon Brando. So Marlon Brando is in what was the war movie? Apocalypse Now. And he plays this crazy nut, and he was kind of like, they said even off set he was acting like weird and crazy, but stuff like that. They get so in the role. But here's Bjork, so she never acted before, so she knew nothing else but to kind of do method acting, in a sense, and she's so in this role that she actually, like, the scene would end and she would be in her trailer crying for 2 hours after. That's how so invested in this role she was. And then even after it, she's like, I'm never going to act again, because it was like an emotional thing for her. It would mess with her head. She got so, and if this is your first movie, the script in this movie is one of the most, like, crazy scripts of what this woman goes through in her life. And the stuff. I mean, there's murder, and I mean, just, it's crazy. Just go watch. I don't know. Maybe I'll, just for the heck of it, I'll play the trailer, and then you guys could go watch it. It's only 1 minute, and then we'll end off on that, because I keep what was it? What did I say? What movie are we talking about? I'm hot and delusional at this point. Dancer in the Dark. In there, right? So let me find if there's a short trailer. I'm not gonna play the whole thing because it's a whole 2 minutes. But I'll play a piece of this.
Your warmest moments, the photos you only want to share with
And I'm
those
on my
close to
own.
you,
I'm on the
deserve to be
wrong
kept at home.
YouTube account, so it's pulling ads. So I'll play the trailer for this.
You like the movies, don't you?
I love the movies.
Yeah?
I just love the musicals.
But isn't it annoying when they do the last song in the films, though?
Why?
Because you just know when it goes really big and the camera goes, like, out of the roof and you just know it's gonna end. I hate that. I would leave just after the next to last song and the film would just go on forever.
Anyway, let me skip around a little bit.
Make sure that you fully comprehend what this means. Once this starts, there's no stopping it. Do you understand me?
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Han Festival Armadillo.
Will you just be my friend and show some mercy, please, and just kill me?
So it's a happy, fun movie.
Why did you kill him?
He asked me to.
The music is cool.
I got little games I play when it goes really hard.
Anyway, you
I
get the
just-
idea. Either you're probably like, what the fuck are you talking about, Dave? This is like a weirdest movie. Depressing. Why do I not see that? But I don't know. I think it's a movie that everybody should see once, and it will mess with your head. From that, you're like, wow, this is some heavy stuff. But it gets heavier as it just gets worse. It's like another movie that's, I guess, similar type of movie is the Requiem for a Dream. That movie, it just gets darker and heavier, and things get worse and worse for everybody. But I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I dig shit like that because it's like, if the more creative and artsy, and I don't want to watch, whatever movies that are kind of just things blowing up and special effects. I dig Star Wars and stuff, but I like movies that kind of I like all sorts of movies. I like stupid, silly movies too. I like Dirty Dancing, and what was that other movie? Roadhouse. Every time Roadhouse is on, I have to watch it. It was voted one of the worst movies. I don't know why. I mean, I understand it wasn't like Academy Award winning, but it's a cool movie. I love the scene where Patrick Swayze is like, "Be nice. Be nice. Be nice." The guy tells you, to go fuck yourself. Be nice, And the guy's like, "What if he tells me my mother's a whore?" He's like, "Well, is she?" There's some good lines in that, And he's like, but it's a good philosophy. Like, if you take nothing else from that Roadhouse movie, the philosophy is like, be nice till it's time to not be nice. If that isn't a philosophy of life or how to deal with people, like always be nice. till it's time to not be nice, you know? And, you know, so I'll leave you off with that because that's a good philosophy of life, I think. 'Cause sometimes, you know, it's time to not be nice. Sometimes you can't take no shit, you know? Take no shit. What was it saying? Speak softly and carry a big stick. Was that Winston Churchill? Good philosophy. Should always be nice to people, but take no shit. I'll end off on that. How's that? See, you learn music and philosophy here, and life advice. What more could you ask for? You know. Anyway, see you guys Saturday, 9:30. Me and Karina will be singing some I don't know what's cool stuff, fun stuff, good stuff. Any requests? Shoot them my way. Hasta la vista, baby.